Monday. We had serious technical issues then. So
Okay, it keeps saying that we're being live streamed, so now I got it. Okay. Now I can start, right?
Yeah, you can go ahead now.
Okay. Did he say yes or no?
you're good, Sherry.
Okay. Welcome everyone, to anyone who is listening in. My name is Sherry Hofshire, and on behalf of the Nebraska Arts Council, I'd like to welcome you to this grant panel. We have convened today to review the applications for the basic support grant category, and the decisions will be made by this panel, and then that will determine the funding of each of the applications. The application recommendations then will be reviewed by the Nebraska Arts Council, the Board of Directors at the next meeting on June 6th, 2023. So let's begin by having each of our panelists introduce themselves and what their current position is to those that are listening in, and we'll start with you, Tanjay, please. And you are muted, so. Tanjay, you're muted. Can you unmute?
Yes,
There you go.
there I am. I'm Tanja Enoch with the Arkansas Arts Council, and I am the Community Development Program Manager at that organization.
Thank you. Eric?
Hello, everyone. I am Eric Giles, Learning Services Director at the National Assembly of State Arts Agencies.
Thank you. Matthew?
Hi, good morning, everyone. I'm Matt Hinkes. I'm the Vice President of Grants and Initiatives for the Iowa West Foundation. Part of my responsibilities have included overseeing our art portfolio as well as a lot of our rural giving.
Thank you. Kathy?
Yes, good morning, everyone. I'm Kathy Starkweather, and I'm retired now, but I was the director of the Center for Rural Affairs nonprofit organizations Farm and Community Program. And in that program, we did projects on community art installations and development.
Okay, thank you. And I'd like to introduce our Executive Director of the Arts Council, Mike Markey. And Mike, it's anything you would like to say.
Yeah, thank you, Sherry. And my thanks again to the panel. And I welcome everybody out on the live stream. You heard their introductions. You know by now that we have assembled a great panel of experts with a wealth of knowledge about the arts and about community support and how the arts can be important in their communities. And I thank you for the work that you do across the state in being leaders in the cultural landscape. You should learn a lot by what they have to say today, and I encourage you to continue to do your work to support and advocate for the arts. Your letters and phone calls to your elected officials have been very important over the years, and it's one of the reasons that public support for the arts in Nebraska has been strong for a number of years. And I encourage you to do so. Thank them, invite them to your events. This legislation session will end one of these days, and they'll be looking for some diversions. So I encourage you to invite folks to come to your events and to thank them for the work that they do on behalf of public art. Sherry, thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Stephanie Plummer, who is Program Coordinator, now will explain the panel process to everyone who's listening in.
Yes. And just a few things before I explain. If you've not already, please take a moment if you're watching the live stream and let us know what organization you're with so that we have a sense of who is joining us today. You can comment on the live stream and do that. A reminder to panelists that even though you can't see or hear the audiences, they can see and hear you. So make sure to also stop your video if you need to step away. We'll take a break each hour. But if you do need to step away, just use the chat function or throw up a hand, and I will let the chair know that we may need to take a pause. When we do take a break, we'll let the panel and those on the live stream know that we're taking a break, And we will put up a slide so that no one thinks they're lost. And we'll announce what time we'll reconvene and when we will restart that panel. So for the panel process, panelists have received and have read all applications in advance. Each application has been assigned a primary and a secondary reviewer. Applications will be discussed and then individually scored by each panelist according to the published NAC criteria for this category. The panelist scores will then be averaged and the applications will be ranked according to that average score, highest to lowest. Panelists will then determine which of the applications merit funding based on these scores. A mathematical formula will later be applied to determine grant award amounts for approved applications. Award applications will be based on the average score for each application and the available funds in this category. Higher ranking applications will receive a greater percentage of their request. Finally, NAC staff members are here to assist with the panel process, remaining neutral so as not to influence the panel's decision. As such, NAC staff does not engage in panel discussions except to add clarification about grants or procedures when appropriate. And today the applications will be discussed in alphabetical order. And that's it, Sherry.
Okay, thanks, Steph. So let's begin. Stephanie will provide a brief synopsis of each application. Then I'll call on each of the panelists for their comments in this order. Well, the primary reviewer, the secondary reviewer, and then ask for any additional comments by the other two reviewers. And so now we will proceed with the first application.
All right, our first application is Aubin Music at First Plymouth. And this NAC grant will provide operational support to Aubin Music at First Plymouth for fiscal year 2023 through 2024. Go ahead, Sherry.
Okay, then the primary reviewer on that is Matthew.
Okay, so Aubin Music at First Plymouth. This is an organization that has a over 50-year history with offering musical performances. The mission is to gather to experience music that inspires, and they're embedded in the First Plymouth Church. And this year, they're planning to offer 12 performances in the coming season, which includes their Youth Masterworks Festival with area high schools. In terms of artistic excellence, I thought they had a nice mix of local and touring performers. They're actively working to navigate some strong artistic quality and balance that with popularity, which is, of course, a tension that we see across a variety of arts organizations. Under planning and evaluation, their strategic plan includes accountability metrics, which I think is a really critical element that we don't commonly see. I like that their work is trying to be nimble with respect to their evaluative data. They have been trying different approaches and are adapting if what they're using isn't working for them. I would like to see a little more proactive stance on shifting from feedback to outreach on that plan. That said, they're collecting audience metrics at each concert and conducting a quality analysis following each one. So I think they're starting off on a really good foot. In considering their fiscal health, the one thing that I find a bit troubling is their decision to offer free concerts and use that opportunity to raise funding for other organizations. It's certainly a gracious act in their community, but as an organization, fundraising for organizations that don't further your own mission feels a bit like mission creep. How much more could you advance your own mission if you apply that energy to fundraising for the actual concert series that you run? And that's, in my mind, part of the duty of loyalty that a board has. Additionally, tickets can be an important source of feedback from an audience. The progression of an individual single ticket buyer to a multi-buyer or subscriber can be valuable data about how the audiences and the community are receiving what you're offering. Access is definitely important. I know that's one of the motivational factors for this, and I think there's a variety of pathways to that. Decreasing the cost across the board is certainly the most costly version to the organization. On the outreach and engagement side of things, their metrics could be a bit more nuanced to understand the demographics that they serve. What are the audience trends that you're seeing? How are the memberships and patrons shifting over time? That may be being collected, I just didn't see it in the application. I did see that the 2022 was a significant attendance year with 1,200 audience members, and that they were tracking that and seeing a shift towards family. So I believe there is good data that's being collected. I'd love to see a little bit more of it in the application. They do a good youth programming through their Masterworks Festival. The program exposes young people to new music and, of course, their parents and families as well, which is always the great Trojan horse of arts programs, right? Get the kids and then you get the parents when they come to the concerts. Those are my comments on the application.
Okay, then the secondary reviewer is Eric.
Thank you. And thank you, Matthew. I think you hit on most of my main points, but I'd like to say that as far as artistic excellence is concerned, I'd like to add that their programming really shows an understanding of who they are and kind of where they fit within their community, which is always nice to see. It shows that they're being responsive to the community they're in, but they understand what their role is as well within that. So that kind of helped prevent that mission creep that you were talking about. Is like they kind of know where they sit there and where their strengths are. Planning and evaluation. I would also add that, they have a diversity of evaluation techniques, which I think is great. They're not reliant on just one or two ways of evaluating their programming and their interactions with the community. It's always hard to get substantial audience evaluation through surveys and stuff. So I don't want them to give up on that. I think finding other ways to acquire it or to encourage it. There are other avenues towards that, maybe providing multiple opportunities for both participants, but also the community at large to kind of have some input into kind of what their programming is and the evaluation of how they're doing. So organization is a great way. That could be, online surveys. You could also add incentives to some of their surveys, like maybe a free ticket to one of their programs if you fill out a survey. So like a chance drawing, fill out a survey and get a chance to win free tickets to an event or something like that. I think I liked their strategic plan. I thought it reflected a very thoughtful and well-articulated process, which I was very pleased to see. I have to say that, I thought their budget was put together well, showed good revenue sources, nice diversity of them, a realistic approach. I did notice the same thing, Matthew, about kind of the free event and then fundraising for another organizations. I think I interpret it differently as this is a way to strengthen their community partnerships in a way, but I am sensitive to the fact that, yeah, they're leaving money on the table for themselves as well. So perhaps within that mix, it's not only raising for other organizations, but providing the opportunity if people want to, fundraise for them as well. So kind of making it not one or the other, but both. Within that, I thought their outreach and audience development, I agreed with Matthew wholeheartedly on that. One thing I'll say about the provided DEI code of conduct. At first, I was kind of like, okay, this isn't really a DEI plan per se, but I did notice it was embedded within their strategic plan. I think the steps they're taking within their strategic plan as well as within diversity, equity, and inclusion work, makes sense for who they are. They're good first steps. I would encourage them in the future to kind of build out a diversity, equity, and inclusion plan itself and break that off from the strategic plan or as supplemental material within the strategic plan so they can go a little bit more in depth. I do appreciate they're trying to build the diversity of their board and membership. And with Matthew, I agree that kind of tracking that demographics and trying, it feels like they have that information there, but I didn't see it specifically outlined here.
All right, and then Anjay, do you have any comments?
You were calling on me,
Yes.
Tanja? No, I think they covered it pretty well.
Okay, Kathy?
I just have one additional comment. I understand the church itself is very community driven and does a lot of community engagement and partnerships. And I think that probably is one of the main reasons that the organization reaches out and tries to do some fundraising for other organizations, just building that community partnership.
Okay. All right, then why don't we'll just give you, if you want to make any changes in your scores, if you're ready to go on to the next one, just give me a thumbs up or something. Okay, I see Kathy's thumbs up. Matthew Tanjay, are you okay? You ready to go? All right. Thank you very much. Then we'll move on to the Alliance Arts Council. Steph, want to introduce?
Yeah. This SNAC grant will provide operational support to the Alliance Arts Council for fiscal year 2023 through 2024.
Okay. And the primary viewer is Tanjay.
Yes, my review of the Alliance Arts Council, I'll do as Matthew said, that the mission statement is the Alliance Arts Council will provide quality artistic, cultural events and opportunities for citizens of Box Butte, and I hope I'm saying that right, County, and the surrounding rural area. I think that for artistic excellence, I think that the mission statement should be expanded to include the artist in residence and the exhibit information that they put in their application, because I think that's that to me stood out as a really important part of what they're doing. And I for your sample for just going to the website, I thought that were you wanting me to see the show schedule, or what exactly you were wanting me to see in going to the website? And then for planning and evaluation, I was curious about including other grade levels as opposed to focusing on fourth graders and expanding it to the senior citizen and the care centers, seeing more of that, more involvement in those areas. And I thought that the focusing on sustainability was good, and that you are working on an endowment fund that will help the sustainability of the programs. And for outreach and engagement, I do, as you said, that Alliance is an underserved community, so that covers that aspect of it. But outreaching to other underserved communities, and that you do have a good outreach to your public officials. I thought that was a very good point in what you brought out in your application, and that you do have a nice mix of support letters. And that will cover what my view of the application.
Okay, thank you. Kathy?
Excuse me. Yes, I thought that the excellent variety. I thought the program had an excellent variety to it, and appreciated being able to see community input into that. The planning and evaluation, I think they've done a really good job in the evaluation component. And I like that they are including the artists. If anybody sees me looking back and forth, I have my computer up here with my notes on it. So that's why I'm going back and forth. So I'm trying not to be rude. But I thought it was a very good application. I did have some concerns about the DEI plan. I felt that could have been strengthened. What I found was only an indication that they will, quote, provide opportunities and access, and then more on that based on race, color, region. And I'm assuming that the word region meant religion. It was just a typo. And I'd like to see more steps to and more clarity to satisfy the commitment to DEI. For example, the board might look into some training, on implicit bias or outreach to communities of color. And I understand, having worked in rural most of my life, either for the Center for Rural Affairs or USDA, I understand that it is an underserved community in terms of location and access to a lot of not only opportunities, but services. but DEI is important, and I'd like to see a little bit more clarity on that.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments, Eric?
Just a couple of points to emphasize. I really enjoyed their use of the feedback mechanisms to help drive programming, and like Kathy, I was impressed that they actually, survey and talk to the artist and evaluate the artist as well as part of that. So I was really impressed with that. And I'd like to echo that the DEI plan felt light, and like they could get deeper on that as they're moving forward, particularly within that. And also, I felt like part of that is maybe they haven't had a conversation about what diversity, equity, and inclusion means for them in their particular area. Because it can mean slightly different things, and not to take it as a whole cloth, but talk about, okay, what does diversity mean where we are, right? And then look at addressing it that way, rather than trying to think of an overarching umbrella of diversity, equity, inclusion, trying specific to your locale. I think that's often a helpful way to approach it when in a more rural situation where the population may seem more homogeneous than in others.
Okay, good comments. Matthew?
Yeah, so I would just also +1 what everyone said about the DEI and add one of the elements was that I saw in there was a discussion about kind of as you get outside of the town limits and serving people beyond the border of the town. And I can appreciate that. I would have liked to see, how do you measure that? Are you doing well? Are you seeing an increase over time? Because there was a lot of sort of economic development framing around some of the work that they were doing, and the hope that when you bring in some of the folks from outside, some of them are wealthy. Some of them may spend money in town, and that's great. That's all things that can often be tracked as well. And so I think looking at that, if you're trying to specifically emphasize reaching beyond the borders of the town, then you can track that oftentimes through a variety of mechanisms. The other thing I would just not say is good or bad, but ask the question of, in arts organizations that I've worked with, there's always an interesting tension with seniors in particular and subsidizing senior tickets. There are many seniors who are on fixed incomes and who can benefit from subsidized tickets. And in a number of the arts organizations we work with, the #1 demographic with the most wealth are the seniors. And so navigating that can be challenging. And I would just ask the question, have you looked at that closely when you thought about the subsidy for the senior tickets? I know it's a modest one, but sometimes you're missing out on a key demographic if we make the assumptions that we sometimes have that are often based in reality, but not always.
Good point. All right, I'll give you a minute or so. Do you need time to make any changes in your scores based on the comments? If not, give me a thumbs up if you're ready to move on. Okay. Okay. Then let's move on to the Carnegie Arts Center. Matthew, you're primary.
Sherry, I'll just introduce.
Oh, I'm sorry, Steph.
That's okay. And honestly, it's going to be pretty much the same thing throughout. This SNAC grant will provide operational support to Carnegie Arts Center for fiscal year 2023 through 2024.
Okay, Matthew.
So overarching comment is that I thought this was a standout one in my evaluation. So they inhabit, of course, the historic Carnegie building, which can be a real gem in some of the small towns throughout our area. And they seem to be living up to the potential of that building. The mission they have of being a fine arts facility committed to offering persons of all ages opportunity for cultural expression and enjoyment of the visual and performing and literary arts. It does seem that that's something that they're fulfilling as well. When I look at it, they've got 18 to 20 rotating exhibits a year with both an upper gallery that is more focused on, it seems like, traveling or professional artists, and a lower level that is semi-professional, collegiate, or using school shows. And that's a nice kind of balance to have. I love it when these arts organizations are able to both to balance those equations of local, traveling, professional, of semi-professional, or youth art. And so I thought there was a great mix of that, but also a good mix that they had was both being in their facility and getting out into the community. And that's always a risk that organizations just who are facility based stay in their galleries and they don't bring art out into the community. They seem to be actively seeking to embed arts in the community through their through other programs that they have. And the data suggests that the community does find it responsive and valuable to what the community is looking for. Under planning and evaluation, I felt that they demonstrated kind of a planful learning using data that they clearly wove through a lot of their thinking and approach. Again, this is a comment that I made before, but I would like to see more data collection in the DEI plan specifically to look at their progress. But I still thought overall it was a strong plan. They are clearly engaged in building their board with capacity and skills to plan. And the notes on the kind of value proposition switch in their thinking from major large fundraising events to smaller, more accessible events were excellent. And they reflect what I've seen in a lot of other organizations, that sometimes lower infrastructure events can be higher yielding for fundraising than heavy, large events that are maybe once a year. From a budget perspective, I would have liked to see a depreciation line, knowing that you're in a historic building and knowing that this is some of those buildings have significant long-term maintenance needs. I would just like to know that you're making sure you're planning not to end up in a tough capital campaign down the road. Finally, with outreach engagement, seem very strong on engagement throughout the community with the collaborations they have and engagement, especially around the education audience. And again, including some of the DEI efforts on their own board. But their education of policymakers was there. It was okay, good. I think there's maybe a little bit more you can do to emphasize it, and you seem to have the skills and abilities to do that well. So I would push you lightly on the reaching out to policymakers to educate them, because I think you're well positioned to do that.
Matthew, I just wanted to jump in real quick and let you know, we don't actually allow them to include depreciation.
Well, then they're doing the right thing.
They are. I will say though that, if you do have feedback about the way they discuss capital or their structure or something like that, that's fine. But
Nope, then they followed the rules. Good job.
Okay, Tanja?
Yes, I agree on the DEI. I second that. Have the comment on they're working on the DEI in the upcoming season. I wasn't clear on how they're measuring the answers to the posed questions on their survey and why they make the survey optional. But I guess you can't force people to answer surveys. But that kind of struck me in their comments on planning and evaluation. And I do think that they have good partnerships and that they have good advocacy work. So I just wanted to give them a kudos for that. And I think it was a strong application as well. That would be the end of my comments.
Okay, Kathy, any additional comments?
No, I don't have any additional
Okay.
ones.
Eric?
Thank you.
I will just second or third the DEI comments about collecting those demographics and collecting some measurable thing, but that their DEI plan was strong. I really appreciated the action steps and the way they went about laying it out. So this was also a standout application for me.
Okay. And I'll give you a couple minutes. Anybody need to make any scoring changes? Otherwise, thumbs up. Are we ready to go? Okay, then let's move on to Circle Theater. Tanja?
Oh, I'll do my little sentence.
Oh, I'm sorry, Steph, I keep.
No, that's okay. It's just really helpful for, I think, the minute taker and the people in the audience. This
Okay.
NET grant will provide operational support to Circle Theater for fiscal year 2023 through 2024.
Okay, now you're on, Tanja.
Thank you. In looking at their mission statement, I think that it needs to be broadened. It's a one sentence where they're saying Circle Theater engages individuals of all abilities and creative opportunities on and off stage. I do believe that you have a good outreach to the disability community. That stood out to me as a plus. And for planning and evaluation, that you have a good use of your surveys, and you have, I appreciate the detailed strategic plan, and that it was a good strategic plan. I do think that your board it's small, that you may consider expanding your board membership. And I had a question in your outreach and engagement as to other forms of diversity, equity, and inclusion. I do believe that you have a great list of partnerships. So I think that other than that, I appreciated your application.
All right, Matthew?
I agree with a lot of Tanja's remarks. To me, this one felt a little different from some of the other applications in the sense that there's a very target audience that they're working with and a very target population that they're trying to support. And so from that perspective, I felt the artistic excellence, a lot of clarity about your audience, and really trying to be highly responsive to that target audience. The programming felt strongly aligned in that way, in my mind. So I felt that led to high value. The planning and evaluation, the area that I saw an opportunity to be a little stronger was the budget. I know that you work with a grant writer on occasion, and I saw it just some errors in the budget that looked like it needed a little bit more attention, and some things that the description of a line didn't sum to what the actual line was in the budget. So I would just double check that to make sure that you don't underfund yourself or put yourself in the position of making people think you're trying to overfund yourself, which are the two outcomes that happen when those don't match up. In terms of the outreach and engagement, really, really nice with the collaboration, as Tanja mentioned, and the audience development I thought was pretty strongly done. But what I would have liked to see on the flip side with the audience engagement piece is how can you get new people through the door? Because the excellence that you have in the mission of your organization is so much stronger as you cultivate new audience members. And it seemed like an important part of your mission to be really focused there. I also won't skip over saying happy 40th anniversary next year. That's a wonderful milestone to hit. And then I think I had one. Oh, the last comment I have is just that you have a real opportunity with that alumni group, and I was happy to see that you're tapping into them, especially for the 40th anniversary as a stakeholder group, because I've seen with a lot of performing arts organizations that you just get this incredible opportunity to impact people's lives and experiences. And when you can reconnect them to that and what you're doing today, it's a fundraising opportunity that exceeds a lot of other ones. So I'm glad that your minds are there, and I think that that's a strong thing to do.
Thank you. Kathy?
I don't have anything to add.
Okay, Eric?
I have nothing to add either.
Okay, I would like to just add a comment as a backup to Matthew, in that they really do need to look at the budget because several of the figures did not match up. And like you said, sometimes you're underestimating and sometimes you're overestimating. So that really needs to be cleaned up. Okay, everybody ready with the thumbs up, or you make any change of scores? Okay, then let us move on to Stephanie.
All right. The next one we'll be doing is Columbus Arts Council. This NET grant will provide operational support to the Columbus Arts Council for fiscal year 2023 through 2024.
Okay, and Kathy.
Yeah, good morning again, everybody. The mission statement for the Columbus Arts Council is that it is dedicated to enriching the community through the promotion and sponsorship of the arts. In their artistic excellence, the comments that I had under that, I thought that the programs and services planned for the rest of the year and this year and next year support that mission. The youth programs and services seem responsive to the community and were excellent. But the organization has indicated a commitment to serving a diverse community more clarity could have been provided about what percentage of the activities are planned to be directed to the diverse community. The programs offered have value to the community. I thought that was they've done an excellent job with that. There was notation of tours, bus tours to Omaha and Lincoln to provide cultural experiences. I would just put a little pitch in there for all of the really interesting things that are going on in rural Nebraska, and maybe consider, looking closer to home. Like David City has the Bone Creek Museum of Agrarian Arts, which is super cool. Decatur turned an old railroad car into a reading and storytelling center. Lions developed an outdoor theater that is a mobile theater, essentially. So there are a lot of different towns around where people could learn from each other, I think, instead of always, I live in Lincoln, so I know it, I like the town and everything, but it would be good to recognize that there are really cool things in our own backyards. The planning evaluation comments, the organization stated that in determining how the educational elements will benefit each particular audience, it might be well to include something in the strategic plan to develop and use a method or some kind of a tool to get community members' input into what they want and need, taking into account the need for, bilingual materials and outreach. The strategic plan could be stronger, I think, with more clarity in the dates of the stages. Identifying a year only can make it difficult to track progress toward that. The organization is to be commended for including diversity, equity, inclusion training for the board and staff, going so far as to hiring someone to evaluate their policies and procedures. That is, as I said, commendable and very good for you. The organization, finally, the outreach and engagement component. The organization has listed a number of community partnerships, which is great. I did notice that Centro Hispano, which is spelled CENTRO, Hispano, HISPANO, is one of, there's even a board member, I think, on your board from Centro Hispano, and it was misspelled completely. It says Central, CENTRAL, ESPANO, which means Spanish. So paying attention to those things is very, very important. The organization, again, is to be commended for a commitment to improving your DEI. And I would have liked to have seen, I don't really remember what the time frame was when you actually applied for this grant, but if there is anything to report back on information on the progress made in DEI so far, it would have been nice to have seen that in this application. That's all I have.
Okay. Eric?
I agree with almost everything Kathy said. I'll just say that I was impressed with the programming, in particular, the engagement with youth, their Art2Go programs, the fact that they're in the schools, they're doing a variety of things. Their partnering and how they use partnering to help them reach new audiences, I thought was, excellent. I like the way they did that. Planning and evaluation, I agree with Kathy on their strategic plan. The strategic plan for me read more like an action plan than a strategic plan, which is fine. I mean, it was well devised, logical, rooted in the mission and goals of the organization. But I think those are two different things, and maybe doing a little exploration on how your action plan actually comes out of a strategic plan. The strategic plan kind of frames that direction your organization is going, whereas the action plan is giving you specific steps to those goals, is a much shorthand. But there is also something, and I'll be that guy on this panel, within their budget. I've noticed in a lot of these, and this is normal for smaller nonprofit organizations in general, not just in the arts, an absence of allocation for reserve funding. That's a sustainability thing, making sure that you have some funds in case you lose a donor or in case an emergency comes up. Having a little backup cash, unrestricted cash somewhere. There are a number of ways of allocating that. but making sure that you have a little bit of money in there for, loss of income or other unbudgeted expenses. That could be diverting some of the money off, or actually asking for it within particular grant requests and specifying, we're going to use some of this to help build our board reserve in order to create, make this a sustainable organization going forward. Like I said, that's often very hard with small organizations to take that step, but it's an important step as you're kind of looking out towards the future. I was really impressed with their understanding of the demographic makeup of their area. They have looked at that and they've made plans to engage with the diverse segment. I do agree that the way they use diversity and diverse within their thing lacks clarity is kind of what they're talking about, especially because they seem to kind of understand what their community is about and who they have there. Their outreach and engagement seems well thought out. I was also very pleased to see within their advocacy, talking about advocacy work, that they have connections not only at the state level, but at the national level, and are kind of tracking both of those things and getting input from Americans from the Arts as well as Nebraskans for the Arts, so that when they do contact their representatives, they have a little more oomph, a little more backup to that. They can speak not only at the local level, but the national level, which frankly, for state representatives, actually, has a great impact. If you can say, use some comparative data that way, saying like, here in Nebraska, in our rural, we have this, whereas in this state or nationally, it's this way. That data and that information is incredibly impactful when talking to your representatives.
All right. Any follow-up, Matthew?
Yeah, just a note, I think it was really well covered up until this point. I have one modestly diverging opinion from other folks, which is simply that my impression of the strategic plan was, I agree with Eric's definitions. He's right about that. And I like that it's very action focused. And I think that's important, especially because it seems to me that the organization is kind of punching above its weight in terms of the amount of staff it has. When I look at their social media, I'm floored by what they seem to accomplish. And I'm worried that the $500 budget line for events seems implausible for what all you're doing. So, but I'll leave it to them to know best their budget on that line, and agree with the comment that as an organization, make a lot of sense to think about long-term sustainability, and everyone else's comments were helpful as well.
Okay. Tanja?
No comments.
Okay. All right. Anybody need time to make any score changes? Everybody okay? Everybody ready to go? Thumbs up. All right. Stephanie, the next one, please.
Sherry, I think it's been close to an hour. Did you want to take a break right now, or do you want to do one more?
It's only 20 after 10. So let's do another one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sounds good. All right. The next one is community players. This NAC grant will provide operational support to community players for the fiscal year 2023 through 2024.
All right. First person up, Tanja.
Yes. I really enjoyed this application. On the artistic excellence, I think that the programming was well-rounded and lots of thought and prep was put into the choice of the lineup. I basically have nothing, any comments as far as improvement in that area. The planning and evaluation, I thought their survey practices and their follow through was good, where they engaged every part of their programming, the cast, the crew, the production team, and the board and the staff. I thought all of that was very good, and it leads to strong buy-in in their programs. And for outreach and engagement, I thought that they had good coverage, good outreach and good coverage, and strong community partnerships. And I thought the podcast was clever and a good engagement tool. And I felt that they had good relationship building with their state and local policymakers.
All right, Kathy?
Yeah, I echo everything that Tanja said. I thought the organization should be commended on the way that the regular season and stage door production are selected by a mixed group of community members and staff. I really like that they bring, this diverse group of people in to make decisions on what they'll be doing. Would it be possible? I just wondered, to address the diverse production, would it be possible to put out a call for actors into surrounding communities to include maybe Crete, where Doane College is located, or Lincoln's Theater Company, which isn't very far away? And the applicant indicated that they get a lot of people coming to Beatrice to watch their programs. The evaluation process, I think, was very thoughtful and thorough and reached every component. The outreach and engagement piece, I thought I know Tanja's already said something about the podcast, but I thought it was just super innovative to do that. And you reach a lot of people, and that's excellent. The strategic and diversity plan seems it could be it addresses diversity well enough, but it might be something to consider again, to have maybe a greater effort to reach a diverse acting population or from Lincoln. Since the applicant indicated early on in their application that it's very difficult to get any diversity in their productions because their community is, I think it's like 94% Caucasian. That's all I have.
Okay, Eric?
Nothing to add from me.
Okay, Matthew?
Just two statements. One, I love the audience study. That's amazing. And then using the materials that La Piana's group created, that's really strong as well for the planning. So congrats.
All right. Okay, I think then, Steph, I think this might be a good time then to take a break. Do you guys want 5 minutes, 10 minutes? What do you want? 5 minutes? All right, let's take a 5-minute break and we'll see you back.
We'll come back about 10:20. I can't do math. 10:29 for those watching. It looks like the only person we may be waiting for is Tanja. Ah, and you're there. It looks like we are all present. Rachel, you back on?
Yep, I'm here.
Awesome. All right.
All right, welcome back, everybody. Let's go ahead. Stephanie, the next one, please.
Yeah, the next application is from the Fremont Area Art Association. And this NAC grant will provide operational support to the Fremont Area Art Association for fiscal year 2023.
And we begin with Eric.
Thank you, Sherry. So the Fremont Area Art Association exists to promote visual art, culture, and education, according to their mission statement. I think that, as far as artistic excellence goes, they're doing a good job in making sure that they're offering services and programs that kind of match the needs of the community. The program also fits well within their mission, and appears to be pretty high quality as well as community engaged. With their mission statement, it's pretty generic, and I'd like them to consider, since they will be going into a strategic planning session and having conversations, expanding that mission statement, or more targeting that mission statement, or like just reassessing it and fleshing it out a little bit. I think that, part of having that conversation, even if you do not change the actual mission statement, is really digging into who you are and what you do. So readdressing, especially when you have a rather generic one, helps a lot as you're kind of framing strategic plans going forward. With respect to their planning and evaluation, I think that, it's important to track attendance and fundraising and participation. I mean, those are invaluable ways to evaluate things. Don't get me wrong. I feel like they could go deeper. Maybe, I don't know how they attract attendance, but getting some of that demographic data in some way. I would suggest other evaluations methods beyond word of mouth to gauge the experience of participants. I think that's sorely lacking. I think they need to do something, even if it's as simple as a print, like a suggestion box and note cards with some targeted questions on it available in the space, so that when people come to the space or to an event, they can comment on it. You can gather it that way. Surveys through email, a little more interaction with the community and participants. Their current strategic plan ends after this year. I don't think it's the strongest of strategic plans I've seen, but it did map a decent arc for the organization. They have a new executive director. I'm really thrilled that they plan on putting a lot of good thought and work into the strategic planning process coming up. That the executive director is, and taking some courses to kind of think about that in a different way, learn some best practices. I think they could really bump that up. It feels kind of like a strategic plan light to me. I think fleshing out that strategic plan, assessing their mission statement again, and think about some actionable steps. As I mentioned before, I'm a stickler for trying to find ways to provide a reserve fund for sustainability in their budget. And so that's one thing I saw missing here. And so I think it's something to also look into, is like, okay, how can we get some of that reserve funding and get some backup funding in there in case something happens. Outreach and engagement. I think they're doing a good job of finding and cultivating partners within their community. I like that they understand and use community outreach and new member and audience recruitment thoughtfully as part of their program development. I am very concerned that there is not a diversity, equity, and inclusion plan included here. It's not mentioned in their strategic plan anywhere. They talk about diversity through their programming and their plans to create a more accessible space in their new building. That's all admirable, but I'm just not seeing anything where they're talking about the steps they're taking to create more diversity, to track, what diversity means in their community, their demographics, looking at inclusion in their membership and on the board. There are just no supporting documents there to tell me how diverse they already are, or I can't tell, or what their commitment is, or what their action steps are. So they need to do a much better job of digging into that as they're going into their new strategic planning. I am sensitive to the fact that it's an old strategic plan that's kind of a hand-me-down from the old executive director, so there's hope. But I do think that's a big point of conversation and something they need to take seriously moving forward. As far as outreach, I'm pleased to see with their engagement with the city of Fremont, to pursue creative district status. That shows they kind of understand what's going on within that area and kind of how unique that particular district is. But as like an arts organization that's been around 60 plus years and has that means they have a particular standing in their community. I also want to see, more advocacy work listed to help promote the arts in their city, region, and state, like more contact with the representatives, being a leader within that community as far as arts support. I didn't see that listed here. Maybe the case on the ground, but I just didn't see a lot of supporting documentation as to how they go about that. I think that wraps it up for me.
All right, Matthew?
Yeah, a lot of what Eric said was well said, and I'll just see if there's a couple other areas that I can add some thoughts on. But I did like the process they use for considering which opportunities to pursue, especially thinking about specific audiences and what they might need to get out of that experience. I thought was a helpful framework for having especially a board level conversation around the programming. And I do like that they were explicit about the conundrum they confront about, quote it, "It's our mission to expose people of our community and beyond to quality art. Quality art will question, push, challenge, and enrich." That's right. It's not always easy, and it's not always what's immediately popular. It's a chance to help engage in a conversation. The Mission Matters program that the current CEO is involved with is a strong one. And so I'm hopeful that that will help with some of the things Eric identified in terms of the planning that was inherited. On the budget side, I was kind of happy to see that membership made up something like a third of the income. That's a really healthy percentage. And it's also really good direct feedback to how your members perceive your organization is doing. So I'm feeling that's good for the people who are already engaged. Eric talked a bit about further outreach. I love the tagline of "You belong here." That's a fantastic tagline. How do you live into it is the question. Having a plan like the one Eric was talking about is one of the ways to get there. And I think the creative district application process, I've gone through an Iowa Great Places process before in my community. And if it's anything like that, I would say that it's an opportunity to have a lot of conversations in the community about who's included, who isn't, and what the approach and plan is for being that advocate, as Eric said. I hope you leverage that opportunity really well. The last thing I would say is that, and this is another shading of the same thing, but I do see that opportunity for more proactive outreach into less connected parts of the community. I also see that you have very light staffing. So looking for those opportunities like that creative district application to leverage those opportunities to engage with new groups is an opportunity. And I think that can help expand your reach a bit more.
All right. Kathy?
The only thing I would add would be to the DEI. I was troubled too that there wasn't any real plan or strong attention to that, even though I know that their strategic plan is ending this year. Given that it's an important part of the rubric that we have, and knowing that there are several Hispanic-owned businesses in town, it seems like looking. Okay, there's that part, but then the other part is I do want to commend them for an outstanding job of reaching children, and now they're providing resources to the developmentally challenged and people experiencing homelessness. That's all really good. There's no real mention though of or no attention given to reaching out to the elderly population or providing information or recruiting or outreach in other languages.
Okay. Tanja?
I think they covered everything that I was thinking about, so I don't have anything to add to that.
That's great. Everybody ready to move on, or do anybody need time to change scores? You okay? Then let's go on. Steph?
Yes, the next application is for Hastings Symphony Orchestra. This SNAC grant will provide operational support to the Hastings Symphony Orchestra for the fiscal year 2023 through 2024.
Okay, Tanja?
Yes, I commend you on going into your 93rd, I believe, year. And I appreciate that you acknowledged your challenge in the aging demographics and addressing strategies for engaging other age categories. I think that that's commendable for the artistic excellence part of it. The planning and evaluation, I see that you're revising the strategic plan and that you're implementing surveying and focus groups in the new season. But I did have a concern about the that you're considering DEI planning and expanding it, but that caused a little bit of concern for me. And I do in the outreach and engagement part. I think that it's good that you're considering adding a concert in a new rural community that shows that the expanding to the outreaching outlying areas. I thought that was good, and that that you're sending letters to your legislators. But my focus is that you're when you're using words like considering and that you're looking forward to, I think that you action should be put behind what you're saying in the application, and that it should be clear in the application of what your strategies and what you're aiming for and what your plans on how to accomplish the strategic planning and the DEI planning. That's pretty much what I have.
Okay. Matthew?
I'll pick up where you left off because I have some similar comments on some things. I think you've covered a lot of it really well. So I have one thing under the artistic excellence area that I'll say as a real positive was that recognizing just the natural constraints that exist in a smaller community and looking for how you can use those auditioning recruitment processes for the young musicians to kind of challenge and elevate them, and incorporating some of the challenging sections as well. I think that's all very good for promoting artistic excellence within the community, even beyond your specific programs. I'm going to go back to what Tanja was focused on because I'm also focused on that. And I think my reading of your application around the trends towards an aging population that is attending less, there's two ways you can approach how you resolve that problem. One is what you're proposing, which is to expand your geographic footprint and reach more people, but it's still going to be the same audience and it's still going to be attending less and less. The other way is to go deeper and to try to reach out to new people who aren't engaged with your music and make it relevant to them and understand what they need from that music. And that's how you create sustainability for your organization in the long run, in my opinion. And I think that when I look at the planning and evaluation approach, I see you defining success a lot through an organizational lens about the success, your audience size, your concert revenues, your public financial support. That's important for sustainability, but it doesn't help you reach your audience better necessarily. And so this is kind of a vertical integration thing about if you're going to go deeper, you're going to have to think about how it works across a lot of these areas that we're talking about. And I think that doing the work of a DEI plan is one way to look at audiences you're not serving and to start to go deep into asking that. And so if you are considering it, as you're saying, I'd really consider it because I think it's going to be make or break the organization over time. It's a really critical, important thought process.
All right. Eric?
I'm just going to echo what Matthew just said. I think you really need to engage in that DEI plan and look at it as a way of, not just I have to do a DEI plan. It's this is actually important to the sustainability of your organization and reaching your community at a deeper level, finding new members, finding new participants, and then looking as an opportunity to really expand that and go deeper into your community.
All right, Kathy?
Yeah, I don't disagree with anything anybody said. Right on target. I did have some concerns when I looked at the DEI plan that the board was, their task in May was to define diversity. And then I think later on, there was another month that was devoted to defining inclusion, I believe. And they may have meant that they're doing what Matthew suggested, that they really, or maybe it was Matthew or maybe it was Eric, I don't remember. But one of the two of you indicated that it's a really good idea to define diversity in your own community. And maybe that's what they meant, but that wasn't made clear. So just as it reads, that was kind of concerning.
Okay. Anybody need time to change scores? Are y'all okay? All right, Steph, we'll move on then.
Okay, great. The next application is from High Plains Arts Council. This NAC grant will provide operational support to the High Plains Arts Council for the fiscal year 2023.
Okay, Kathy?
Yeah, I really like this application. Their mission statement is they are dedicated to strengthening a thriving arts environment through the promotion of high quality performances and educational support. They, the planning, excuse me, I have to, come on, computer. Operational error. I thought the artists and programs that the organization is offering are what the community wants and they've asked for. And so that's awesome. The outreach done to ensure the community has a large say in the types of programs and artists is also commendable. Then planning and evaluation, I like the multi-prong evaluation methods that have a community-wide reach. They interview individuals face-to-face, which I think adds to the richness of the feedback because they can really probe deeper to find out more. Suggestions relate to the comment about youth programs and checking with teachers to see if the programs are well received by the students. It might be a good idea to just kind of check the temperature of the students too, to see, you know, just a handful of students or random sampling of them to see what kind of programs might appeal to them. The strategic plan overall is good, I thought, but could be stronger by providing evaluation measurements. I'm really strong about that, and I know people look at that differently, but I think it's very difficult to achieve a goal if you haven't stated when you're going to achieve that goal by and who's going to be responsible for doing it. Let's see. Outreach to the state and local policymakers, I think, could be a little stronger. The letter writing campaign is fine, but having worked with the state legislature in the past, I know that they get so many letters that, you know, oftentimes only their staff see them. And so a phone call or an in-person or inviting them to one of your productions, I think would be really a strong way to build that partnership and communication stronger and building the personal relationship. The DEI plan, I think, is very commendable, but the organization would be well to include some training for the board in implicit bias. There are ways to get that without having to pay any money for it. So I think that would have been a good addition. But overall, I thought this project was really good. They're in Sydney, which is very rural, and job well done.
Okay. Eric?
I'm going to echo a lot of what Kathy just said. It's very rural in a small town, and they do an amazing job within that environment. I thought that their planning and events and activities really matched what their community wanted. And a lot of that had to do with how they go about, making sure that the feedback informs their programming going forward. I thought that was commendable. Like Kathy, I thought the strategic plan was lacking some evaluation in there. It also seemed very action oriented, which again is not a bad thing, but consider kind of like separating out goals from actions a little bit more. I thought everything they had based off of who they are, their community, was very reasonable and well thought out for attaining the goals that they identified within that. Their budget, I'll say reserve funding again, just because I feel like I should. Even if it's just a smidge a year, just like starting that saving, starting that investment thing that can help going on. It really does help with fiscal sustainability moving forward. And, they are so well connected with their available local partners, it seems. I was really impressed with their dedication to incorporate more diverse artistic experiences going forward. And I'd just like to say one thing about their DEI plan. When I looked at the committee they put together, I was like, this is, for where they're located, this is an incredibly diverse committee. They really made an effort in getting a diverse committee that reflected their community in a realistic way to get input. I really appreciate that. That shows a lot of dedication, and that can be really tough to do in a rural location. I'll just second that. I think, looking at their outreach advocacy work, it could use a little bump up beyond just the letter. I think that they have a lot to offer, and I think inviting people, representatives out there, or dropping by or giving them a phone call. I think any of those little things, when possible, would be great.
Okay, Tanja, anything else?
No, I have nothing to add.
Okay, Matthew.
I also think it's been covered very well.
Okay, perfect. Anybody need time to rescore? All set to go? Steph?
All right. The next application is for Nebraska Jazz Orchestra, and this NAT grant will provide operating support for the Nebraska Jazz Orchestra's 2023 through 2024 season.
All right, Matthew, we start with you.
Okay. So the Nebraska Jazz Orchestra is dedicated to perpetuating and promoting the unique art form of jazz through performance, education, and creation of new music. And they're based out of Lincoln and doing a lot of their performances at the Lincoln Marriott and Lead Center, with 7 planned programs for next year, including a Master Young Lions program that's a educational outreach and high school and college students participating. In terms of the artistic excellence, there's a focus on attracting high quality jazz soloists each season with a balance of quality, reputation, cost, and availability. Jazz is a wide genre, and I would love to hear more about the selection strategy there and understand how that intersects with the community's interests and feedback, because the jazz I'm aware of, it can be very different from one end of the spectrum to the other. I'd also like to have additional data to back up what the audience numbers look like. What are the trends that they're seeing? How are they analyzing them? Which types of concerts are more successful? How do they grow individuals from maybe buying a single ticket to being subscribers or multi-ticket buyers? With respect to planning and evaluation, they're working to collect evaluative data from their audiences through a question in the program. I thought that's a nice idea. I'd like to know how that's working for them. They didn't provide kind of any data or indication of response rates, so that might help us to know better if that's a very successful approach. I'm sure the other arts organizations would like to know, because I think that's a bit unique. The organization finalized their strategic plan in 2019, and understandably the pandemic then immediately disrupted everything that was planned, as it did for so many. I do think it was a missed opportunity that the response was to wait until this year to replan. A lot of other organizations have done well by planning a little earlier. And I think just generally in a more fluid environment, it invites increased planning rather than holding off and waiting, because the opportunity to respond to the environment is still there. Something that I saw when I looked at the budget gave me the biggest cause for pause in this application, and it's the structure of the organization's management financials. I see 1/3 of the budget goes to what appears to be a for-profit arts management organization. and that the individual who owns the company is listed on the governing board and as the executive director. From the outside, without any additional information, that looks like a really troubling conflict of interest. Now, there's many ways that organizations successfully manage conflicts of interest. There was nothing discussing it in this application. So that was an area that left me with a really uncomfortable feeling about the whole application. With respect to outreach and engagement, they've seen a drop in attendance and support post-pandemic. The response that the approach they're taking seems to be to cut costs. I didn't see the introspective process about how they decided whether they're meeting their audience's needs or not, or if they can reach new audiences. I don't want to see the organization kind of wither on the vine. And I think maybe the planning they're going to do this year might start to address some of that. I also want to see the audience, the organization start going a little bit more proactively out into the community, not just to the educational programs. It felt a bit reactive that those who come to our concerts are treated to great jazz performances and they get a high level of professionalism. But what about people who aren't yet coming? How do we reach those people and introduce them? Jazz is such a phenomenal artistic area, and it's got a little bit of something for everyone, I think. So the opportunity to reach audiences is huge. So those are some of my comments and thoughts about it.
All right. Then follow up from, okay, next was Tanja.
Yes, I agree with everything that Matthew has said. I think that holding off on revisions is not good, that you need to go ahead and tackle that. And the rebuilding of the, I thought there was a good mix of programming, and I like that your outreach to the youth, but again, you need to expand that and to explore, and that you need to explore other ways to survey your attendees to get feedback and to give you a better idea of the direction that you need to go in. Other than that, I think I have nothing to add to what Matthew has put forth.
All right, Eric.
Yeah, I think they covered it. I'll just highlight that I was also concerned about the conflict of interest that seemed, implied within the application, as well as it felt like they have opportunity to engage more community partners, but have not followed through on that. And so I would encourage them to look for other community partners and to approach partnerships maybe in a different way than they have in the past.
Okay, Kathy.
Excuse me, I thought their engagement is ongoing and there's a strong effort to reach young musicians, which I think is, they should be applauded for that commitment to the youth. I agree with the things about the conflict, that's something that seems like a conflict of interest. But the other thing that kind of bothered me was that the applicant indicates that they address outreach to people of color by continuing to bring musicians of color. I think that outreach is more than that. I think reaching out to people and letting them know it's a welcoming environment, it's a safe environment to come to, and you can do that by doing maybe some just pop-up concerts at maybe some of the local churches, work with some of them, or there's the Malone Center, which is focused on children of color, but there's also the adults are very engaged in that. And there's a wonderful outdoor area that would be a great place to, introduce the wonder of the music of the Nebraska Jazz Orchestra. There doesn't seem to be any indication that there's outreach to participation of senior citizens or low income. If I would have liked to have seen too, that if they have in the past tried to include audience of color, how did that work in terms of numbers? How well were those specific performances attended by people of color? Are they achieving that goal? That's all I've
Okay.
got to add.
Okay, everybody okay with their scores? Don't need extra time. Okay, Stephanie, the next one, please.
Okay, up next is North Platte Community Playhouse. The SNAC grant will provide operational support to the North Platte Community Playhouse for fiscal year 2023 through 2024.
Eric, you're up.
So the North Platte Community Playhouse is centered in the historic Fox Theater there in North Platte, which really anchors that arts district. It's also a community gathering space and provides economic impact through tourism. And that is actually also their mission statement, which I found a little odd. It's more of like a descriptive rather than a mission statement. I just wanted to point that out. I don't have much of a problem with it because they do talk about igniting the imagination in artists of all ages. Which I actually think they do a pretty good job of bringing artistic programming to North Platte, and it's high value. Within their evaluation processes, I just don't think they do enough to support the responsiveness to their community. But the programming they shared does look like it's the kind that'll bring in audiences, right? It's the kind that are going to encourage people to come to, and maybe part of being in the historic theater and being at the anchor point allows them to do that. So I guess this comes into the planning and evaluation, where the evaluation process seems really light in engaging audiences and volunteers. Thinking about, a more formal way of doing that, whether it's cards available at performances again, or email, or some other way of getting more targeted input into their programming and how they operate within their community as an organization. I think their strategic plan is okay. They went through a good amount of thought and analysis. It does feel more like an actionable plan, so an action-oriented plan than a true strategic plan. I don't think they need to do a lot of work on that, but I do. They did a nice SWOT analysis, but I do think on their focuses when they're talking about their strategies and their actions, what are you trying to accomplish? What's the goal between community artistic enrichment? What are you trying to accomplish? Like spelling that out in the plan that may have gone into the planning process. It looks like a number of these things that was kind of like an undercurrent, at least in the discussion. But what about venue development? Why is that important? What's the goal here? So spelling those goals out a little bit more in their plan. Their budget, again, I'll just say reserve funds. I'll just be known as reserve funds, Eric, today. I think that they form an important part of their community, and it really behooves them as that important anchor part in the historic Fox Theater to think about fiscal sustainability and to think about how they can become a sustainable organization. I think that's one of the top things that I see missing, is like talking about sustainability overall. Providing, based on what they've provided and their SWOT analysis, I'm really concerned about the lack of details on how they are planning on developing their audience further and kind of their outreach plan. I think, they seem to have an opportunity in their community to kind of be a leader in that community. I think that, as they kind of go through their DEI work, again, kind of like we mentioned before, looking deeper through that DEI work as to like audience members in the community and who they can engage, I think is a good way to approach that. They've established a DEI committee, and they're starting to look at ways to diversify and be more inclusive in their production and programming. I think they really need to lean into that. I think leaning into that's going to bring in some new volunteers from the community to help bolster the shortage they're talking about, and they've been experiencing since the pandemic. And I think that also that outreach is just going to really help them. They do a good, consistent job of letter writing to the representatives. I think that's good. Again, what are the next steps beyond writing those letters? Invite people, make a phone call or two. I think, they have the standing, and they are an anchor organization in their mission statement. So they need to step up and do that more, do more of that. And maybe they do. I just don't see it in the application, reflected in the application.
Okay, Kathy?
Yes, ditto on what was just said. The evaluation plan, I think, could definitely be stronger. It appears that the only kind of feedback they get is from monitoring their social media and seeing what people are saying about the programs they're offering. More outside input is needed, and look into surveys, or interview some people after the programs, excuse me, just to get a sense of, are you on the right track? Are you giving the community what they want? The outreach and engagement component, I think that doesn't seem that there's been, nor planning to be, much outreach to diverse groups of people, including the elderly, people with ability challenges, low income, or minority community members. I think if they did that, it felt like the diversity plan was more of a statement, not a plan to or a commitment to a DEI and how that's going to look with measurable goals.
Okay. Matthew?
All of it's been covered very well. I'll just focus on one area that struck me as a little odd, which was when I was looking at the budget. I was wrestling a little bit before that with the films that are offered through the Fox Theater, and thought, well, that might be a nice way to make money. And I'm worried that you're losing money on it, because when I look at the concessions and the tickets, and then I look at the costs you have, it seems like you have to subsidize the cinema quite a bit to make it work. And there's a couple of other things that when you pair up the revenue and the expenses, you're losing money in a few places that, at least on its face, obviously you'll know your budget better than we can understand from just these simple bits of information we have. But I would really look at your organization's budget from a sustainability perspective. Eric mentioned about the need to grow the reserves. And if you've got a net loss in a few places, you have to really evaluate how important that programming is. And it may be really important programming in the community that's worth operating at a net loss. But then you may have to also figure out how you're going to fundraise for that piece. And feels like I know some small rural communities that have nonprofit theaters that do movies, and they often struggle, but it's all done very well by volunteers and other things. So it's possible to do. You're probably well aware of it already, but that was the thing that jumped out to me immediately is, oh, we're losing money on a couple places. What's the plan? And see that in the strategic plan reflected.
Okay. Tanja, do you have anything to add?
No, just well, I say no and then I start to say something. Just to move beyond statement and show more action on what they're putting down.
Okay, I think probably everybody's okay with scoring. They seem to be, so we'll move on. Stephanie, the next one.
Okay. The next application is from the Tassel Coordination Council. This SNAC grant will provide operational support to the Tassel Coordination Council for fiscal year 2023 through 2024.
All right, we start with Kathy.
Okay. The mission statement is the Tassel is a world-class venue that promotes and supports the performing and visual arts in South Central Nebraska. That was a really strong mission statement, and I really like the fact that they are recognizing themselves as a world-class leader. The artistic excellence, the wide and diverse range of artists that they have, and the talent that the organization is bringing to the county is really excellent. The planning and evaluation, it seems to be ongoing, which is very good. There are areas that could be improved by providing dates to review and assigning responsibility to particular board members to be sure that someone is responsible for carrying out and leading on achieving the goal, just to make sure that nothing falls, out of sight. Strategic planning has been done, but it could be stronger if there were dates and responsible parties. I just addressed that. And the budget seems appropriate and realistic. And the development plan seems a little loose, but it seems to be working all right for them. The final outreach and engagement, the partnerships are appropriate and are used in a really good way to help market performances as well as provide support for the organization. They might consider connecting with some of the local churches to assist in marketing and develop some Spanish language marketing materials, placing those in grocery stores or places where people go. That's what I have.
Okay. Tanja?
I agree with what Kathy has said. I think that they have established good partnerships. Just go a little further with what their evaluations, and I like their mission statement also. That the being world class and just to continue to live up to that, and I think it was good. I appreciate their application.
All right. Matthew?
It's all been covered very well. I would just note that kind of one of the documents that had been provided was a portion of the 990, and it shows a lot of growth from where they were 2 years ago to now. That's a good thing. In terms of the expenses, scaling and growth have challenges. So I didn't see anything that gave me pause, but I'm just acknowledging that go slow, take it right, and it's hard to scale at the rate that you're scaling.
Okay. Eric?
No, I think everyone covered everything I was going to say.
Okay, great. Anybody need time to rescore? Okay, then Stephanie, the next one.
Okay, the next is Valentine Area Arts Council. The SNAC grant will provide operational support to the Valentine Area Arts Council for the fiscal year of 2023.
All right, Eric?
Great. So their mission statement is bringing professional arts to entertain and inspire residents in Nebraska Sandhills. I'd like to say something about the context before I go into it, because I think they do an amazing job based off of how small they are and how small their town is and just the limitations they're facing from what they've shared here. That being said, I'm worried about the Valentine Area Arts Council a bit. I think, as far as artistic talent, bringing artistic talent to Valentine, they do a good job. It's a small community, and they've been consistently able to bring in professional quality artists, from the state and the region. I think, their programs and events seem to match up well with the community interest. They hold some annual events that seem very community centric and appear to be very important events within that small community for people to come together. So I think they're an important organization. I do have some questions with regard to how, their artists are selected. It's such a small board and such a small staff, and it's volunteer. It seems like, the staff and the board select the artists, so there's not a lot of actual input from the community or vetting process. So a lot of that evaluation is word of mouth. I mean, none of this is unusual in a super small community and a small community. I guess my concerns do revolve around they're having trouble attracting new board members. They're kind of with the same board members they've had for years. They're very, very reliant on specific individuals and a handful of individuals to keep this running. I think that, within their budget, again, it's a very small budget. They don't really have any wiggle room to have a reserve fund for that. Like I would mention for other things, they seem to be, they seem to be on the edge a little bit there at the Valentine's Area Arts Council. Like I said, the evaluation process is, it's again, board members being at events and talking to people. There's not a lot of formality to it. There's not a lot of emailing out. I think the recent step of emailing out that evaluation after a season is in the right direction, and I applaud them for taking that step. Their strategic plan is light, but again, it's kind of like we have a small handful of very dedicated people trying to put this together in very limited time as volunteers. I think what they have is well thought out. I don't think it's to the state it really could be or should be. Again, based off the size of the community and the available partners, they do a really great job in bringing community collaborators in and organizations. They work really well with local schools, the Chamber of Commerce they're engaged in. They are very community centered in the work they do. And they're, reaching out to the surrounding region is exemplary. I think that they're, with what they have, they're doing a great job. I am impressed with their plans for the artist residency in their community and their ability to kind of make sure that it's not just centered in one school, but they're using this artist residence to impact other schools and other people within the area. So they're spreading it out in the community. That's really taking into account more than just a grade 4 school, right, or grade 5 in a school. They're bringing that artist around and really focusing on that. I think that is one of the strongest things they have going, is that artist residency program and getting it out there. Again, this, the DEI work is, ongoing there. They're so small, their organization is small and they're their capacity to do it, but they're very cognizant of the diversity in their region. They actually see it. And I really read this in there. They see that as a potential strength rather than a barrier, right? And I think that's incredibly important when approaching DEI work, is that you see it as a potential strength, a potential bonus. They've got that going for them. I do just wish that they would kind of hook that into their strategic plan, hook that into a plan as to how they're going to leverage that strength a little bit better.
Okay. Kathy.
Yeah, I really liked how they saw the diversity as a bonus and a positive thing. I commend them for being able to continue with good programming with such a small staff and the dedicated staff. It's hard, and it takes a lot of commitment and time and positive attitude. I really like how they recognize that they're stronger if they have partnerships. So they've intentionally partnered with other art councils in the region, and that allows them to bring performances in that they may not otherwise get, but it allows them to identify those individuals who then are more likely to hang in to Nebraska for a little while longer and go somewhere else. And so that's very creative thinking. I think the organization should be commended for the effort that it takes to find artists and learning about the steps that the artists need to take to be added to the Nebraska Art Council touring roster. That's something that I haven't seen in the applications. Trying to get that full, complete understanding of, what the artists are facing to try to get on that roster. The evaluation process seems to rely on face-to-face conversations about the presentations and shows that have been delivered. That I think it would be good to go to some classrooms and hold some listening sessions about what might interest the youth. Try to get them maybe youth on the board. I think they said that, youth on the board, and somebody from the Native American community, which is very close. And there's a university, and the mission schools are places to look as well, bring some partnerships. The strategic plan could benefit, I think, from dates and completion. I think probably the biggest hurdle is to try to attract new, fresh ideas to be a part of this board. But I believe in you. I think you can do it. So thank you. Go team.
Yeah, I just say I'm Team Valentine area Arts Council.
We need a pennant or something.
Yeah.
Okay. Matthew.
Go team. Oh no, I appreciate the comments. I have nothing to add.
Okay, Tanja. Anything?
Yes. No, I'll say go team also.
Okay. Terrific. All right, then we have our last one coming up. Stephanie?
All right. This last application is from West Nebraska Art Center. This NAT grant will provide operational support to West Nebraska Art Center for the fiscal year 2023 through 2024.
Okay, Matthew, you're up.
Okay, so West Nebraska Art Center is a cultural nonprofit organization committed to education, awareness, and excellence in the arts, and they serve the North Platte Valley region. They have a 2-gallery system where they have 12 shows annually in their main gallery and additional ones with student work and educational exhibits in their Bronson gallery. I like that there was a wide variety of media that's represented in their arts programming. They seem very responsive to community events that are going on. For example, when the Oregon California Trails Association was there, they did related programming, leaning into the popularity of things like the Yellowstone series to make some of the art relevant for people. I like seeing that. I think that's an important role of an arts organization to help curate some of those understandings and relevance. They did a nice job of including both local and non-local artists, and I think with an eye to quality. Now, they make a lot of their selection with their gallery committee, and they do look at it from a quality perspective. I think there's a risk, though, when you're if you become over-reliant on a small committee, you sometimes get a bit of groupthink or you get stuck or detached from the broader community. That said, I do see that they're engaging to increase their audiences, especially in the Latino community, as well as looking at kind of different segments than we've heard other organizations talk about, like churchgoers as a specific group. So I like that they're being thoughtful about some of that audience segmentation, and that really helps them to, it increases in my mind the likelihood that they'll be successful with their outreach as they're being specific about who they're doing outreach to. Under planning and evaluation, they do a considered job of leveraging the unique assets in their community and where they're situated. There's, I think, evidence of them using good data in their decision making. I would, as we've said in some other cases, like to have just seen them weave some of that data a bit more specifically in the application narrative. The evidence is there, they're using it, but again, I don't know what it is, so I'll believe you. The outreach engagement side of things, they're willing to take some strategic risks. I like that. I like that they're willing to try something and see how it works, and that they're considering both existing and potential community audiences in their programming in an intentional way. I thought there's good integration of the education and interpretation kind of baked into the process, which is a nice pairing. Wide range of classes that they're providing, and they've got some robust outreach. They appear to be making good use of their meeting space as a way to kind of invite people in who may not otherwise be likely to walk through the door. So that's always a great form of capturing people, a reverse Trojan horse, as it were. And then they demonstrate a commitment to reaching new and underserved groups, and they have, I think, a nice process for conducting their educational outreach to policymakers.
All right. And Eric?
He did such a good job of going through this that I'll just add and emphasize a few things. I think that, I want to emphasize that the responsiveness to their community and their programming being really rooted in a few individuals who have a intimate knowledge of the area, and those are kind of how they select artists. It's okay, but I think they need outside perspectives. I think they need to explore ways to bring that in. I think their evaluation techniques also, related to that, feel just a bit too casual and very reliant on that gallery committee or previous artists having known someone or getting the quote unquote pulse of the community. And I think those are valuable when running an arts center, but I do also think that they need some more evaluation techniques in there. They need a little bit more input from participants and residents, and just finding a method to go about that and targeting some people in that way. As is my want in this panel, reserve funding for sustainability, please. Just find a way to do it. It's important. Again, bringing up the point about the data, it's like you can tell it's there. I know they have it. Weave it into the narrative more, make it more, bring it to the top more. Let us see it. Let us see what's going on there. I like Matthew agree that they have a willingness to try things. They have a willingness to step out of their comfort zone with partners and step out of their comfort zone. I think that that's admirable. And I think, keep doing that, finding that balance of taking a risk that can help you grow and finding ways to do that without endangering the sustainability of your organization is a great skill. And it seems like they have that. At least they have the kind of knack for it thus far. And I'd encourage them to kind of keep trying that. So.
Okay. Kathy?
I don't really have anything to add. I think it was covered. Everything was covered really well.
Okay. Tanja?
I agree. Everything was covered very well.
Wonderful. Well, folks, we have come to the point where we now have looked at all of the applications and discussed them. We're going to give you a couple of minutes. Or do you need a couple of minutes to make any changes in any of the scores to this point? Anybody need any extra time? You're ready to go?
Ready?
Okay. Then what we're going to do is take a 5-minute break. During the time that we're breaking, the NAC staff is going to tally all the scores up and prepare the information. And then we'll come back for final discussion. And we'll reconvene and review the procedures and make final determinations. This final portion of the meeting then will not be open to the public. So we will end the live stream now. But before we do, I'll remind all the applicants that you will be notified in June about the funding decisions in the grant categories. So to all of those who are watching today, thank you for joining us and goodbye. And for the panelists, we'll take a 5-minute break while they tally the scores